Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. I'm joined by Andrew Kirch. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm glad you had a nice, relaxing day yesterday, and I was very happy to receive that get well soon LinkedIn DM from you as well after I had that accident. I was like, wow, what a nice guy. So thank you for that.
I saw that. Now, it's never good to get hurt.
No, it's never ideal. I suppose it's never a good time to have an accident. It was just before Christmas. I was due to have quite a bit of time off work anyway, and I was thinking, at least I can rest and not have the stress of leaving a load of projects behind at work. But Andrew, nice to sit down, mate. I know we've had a few false starts with the pod. I think they've all been my fault, mate, haven't they? I think they've all been my fault.
It's just getting time together and time zone hopscotch. It's always difficult when you're crossing this many time zones. That's what it is.
But yeah, no, we're here now, mate, and that's all that matters. For the listeners that don't know you, my friend, I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro. If I get any of this wrong, feel free to let me know. But you've been an owner of a business. You got into network engineering in kind of the late to mid 2000s. You were a president of Trans Communications for 4.5 years, community manager for over 3.5 years, chairman of the Internet Civil Engineering Institute. You were also at CDK Global. You've been a senior solutions architect and a principal systems architect. For over 5 years, been an infrastructure and security architect. And you are currently the director of technical operations at Stoic Cybersecurity. So yeah, welcome to the show.
That's about right.
Cool, mate. Cool. Sounds like you've had an interesting journey, mate. I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but I never think I can do it as well as you. So I'll start where I always start, which is, who are you? What do you get up to? And what's a day in the life like at the minute?
So obviously I'm Andrew Kirch. We covered that in the intro. I've been really a jack of all trades, master of none across just about every discipline in both IT and in cybersecurity. The one that you missed there is you've had Christian Scott on several times. I worked for him and helped spin up his penetration testing effort when Gotham Security was still called Go Vanguard. I was one of his first penetration testers. So not only have I been an infrastructure engineer, Linux engineer, very high level, to the point that I actually have an AS number and am routed on the public internet, I've also been both red team and blue team in cybersecurity, everything from the technical side of cybersecurity to even doing cybersecurity tabletop exercises. So it's a wide set of skills, not necessarily too deep in any one thing, other than just having enough of that skill to be able to speak confidently on it when it comes to a cybersecurity capacity.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I remember now, when we first connected on LinkedIn DMs, we had that mutual connection with Christian. That was a long time ago now. Yeah,
almost 5 months, actually. Back in October.
But yeah, I know. I had Christian on a couple of times. He's a good guy. I bet that was a great time to be working together because that was like the early stages of his business. I can imagine it being a lot of fun back then.
They were in the process of transitioning from an MSP, and of course, having a jack of all trades who's very senior at an MSP makes everything just get done, to moving into cybersecurity and penetration testing and having someone who had some of the kind of off the resume skill set that I have. Was very interesting because one of the things that's not on my resume anymore, just because it was so long ago, during the 2000s, I was the owner and operator of the abusive hosts blocking list, which was the largest DNS blacklist in the United States. So I had rubbed shoulders with spammers, scammers, and hackers and kind of learned their ways all the way back over 25 years ago. And I'll tell you, every day, the biggest asset I have at work is I know how the bad guy thinks. And I see so many people in this industry who don't know that and are just guessing based on what they've learned in a textbook. But to actually rub shoulders with some of these people and put some of them in prison, that's just an indispensable experience.
Yeah, it is. And do you know what? Like, understanding how the bad guys think or hacker mindset, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I think sometimes that's like an underrated, extremely valuable skill. And I've actually had it before, Andrew, where I've had clients that have tried to hire pen testers themselves and they've come to me for help. And one of the things they've said they're missing is they need someone that really understands that hacker mindset. Obviously, you had like first real world, like with the abuse block list, you've had some like really like experience that probably a lot of other people won't get. But is there any tips from the knowledge you've got that could help others to refine that skill of the hacker mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. There are two types of hackers. There are hackers who are in it for money, and then there are hackers that are in it for some sort of political goal, almost the terrorism of the internet. These would be groups like Anonymous. Be very aware if, of the company that you're working for, do they have bad press? Do they have groups of people that don't like them? Do they have somebody that they've really pissed off, whether it's internal or external? And that's the other message that you don't need adversarial thinking to know. All the cameras at Walmart are aimed at the employees, not the customers. And that's because employee and insider threat is a much bigger problem than outsider threat. Is there a department that's disgruntled? Did a leader that a lot of people just leave? Be aware of these things that could cause someone to say, you know what, I'm going to go delete the file server today. I've had it. Be aware that it's not just a technical skill set. You're really dealing with kind of people, both good actors and bad actors, and be aware of what they're doing, what they're thinking, what's going on in the wider business. Just sit around the water cooler a little bit.
Yeah, so there's a time to be in the weeds and there's a time to step back and just look at the overall picture and see what's going on and really, I like that. Yeah, because you think it's teachable then, mate? You think if people haven't got that hacker mindset, they can be taught it?
I think it's learnable. I'm not sure that it's teachable. This is something that really is experience-based. You need to actually deal with these people who have the desire to do this kind of damage and learn how they think, and especially the ego. There's always a huge ego with these people, and learning how they think, learning what they do, why they do it. You can start to look at security vulnerabilities. Somebody dumps a 300-page Nessus report on your desk, and you're looking at it and saying, okay, what do I really think that, pick a hacker that you've dealt with can exploit? Those become your immediate top priority. Hey, I know there's an exploit for this in the wild. I know this is being used. I know that this is going to be a problem, or I think that they can write an exploit for this vulnerability quickly. That's going to completely reprioritize just the simple process of how do I patch what and when. And these other vulnerabilities, wow, that takes a lot of work and doesn't get you very much. Man, I might patch that later, but even though that might have a higher CVSS number, I'm not sure that really is that big a threat. So having that kind of spidey sense of how hard is this to exploit? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And what does the bad guy want? What is the juice they're trying to squeeze? Is it money? Is it embarrassment? Is it trying to damage the business? Yeah, be aware that there's a great example, the AT&T iPad hack. This is a group called GoatSec, who were a group of black hats, and AT&T canceled their unlimited data policy because the iPad was coming out. So everybody who had unlimited data was being pushed onto other plans. Several members of this group were very upset. They started looking for vulnerabilities, and they figured out a way to use the ICC ID embedded in every iPad to exploit a form on AT&T's website and have it spit out the email address of every iPad owner. And that was simply because of a business decision that AT&T made. Absolutely, public reputation of your company is a huge cybersecurity factor, and one that I think is under-discussed.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew. Do you know, when I was listening to you speak then, I was like, I'm going to have to get some stories out of him today. You've just given us one or two now, but there'll be certain things you can talk about and there'll be certain things you won't. But I've definitely got to get a few stories out of you, mate, because I'm sure you've got some fascinating ones. And I think you've even told me one or two, which were very interesting.
Most of them have been told. I'm going to tell an ancillary story, and one that I've always found interesting because I literally got to watch this unravel both in an internet relay chat channel. And for those who haven't used internet relay chat, it's exactly like Discord, except you don't have to pay for it. And they don't record every word you say, allegedly. There was a hacker group, and everybody knows who Anonymous was and to some extent is. I took down and then actually subsequently met the leader of Anonymous, but I'm going to tell you a different story. There was a channel on the Anonymous network called Occupy Wall Street. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Occupy Wall Street actually was started and amplified by the Anonymous group, not for any political end, but simply to see if they could get people to sit out in the cold and laugh. So if you remember them talking about there's no leader, whether it's the egalitarian organization, the reason why there was really no leadership and no direction of Occupy Wall Street was that it was being orchestrated and amplified through, and this is 15 plus years ago, so a very beginner's version, basic version of Twitter, and the other social medias, Dig, I think was still big at the time, even to some extent Facebook, but their goal in amplifying this was not, hey, we don't like Wall Street. They didn't, but that was ancillary. The goal is to see if they could get people to sit out in the cold in that park and then laugh about it. When the weather warmed up, they didn't care anymore. But that was how Occupy Wall Street actually happened. And a lot of people, I don't know that story's ever been told, or at least not outside of a courtroom.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's fascinating just listening to all the different reasons. And again, listen to you speak there as well about when you're looking at different situations, you're like, okay, that can be exploited really quickly, but I know they won't do it. I can tell a lot of that. You're right. You can learn it, but you're definitely not going to get that level of knowledge without experience and a lot of commercial experience as well. I think it's a bit like with critical thinking skills. It's like, I've got to the stage, people have to have been in the commercial world for a while to have refined that skill set, don't they?
I think it's exactly the same thing. And in this case, they have to have been in that world with black hats and with these people that are maliciously doing damage to understand how they think, what the values are, what the culture is. It's very much like a business, especially as this became more and more professional. There was a IRC user on EFNet called Bison, and Bison didn't do anything illegal, but he wrote and sold software that allowed hosts that had already been compromised to be used to send unsolicited commercial email. Obviously running a DNS blacklist. This was somebody that I talked to quite frequently just to understand what his thought process is. What's he thinking? What's he doing? Why is he doing it? He releases a new piece of software. I want to know about that. I want to know what that does. And how do I protect the people that use my blacklist from it, right? What you get from that ground level engagement. And the best part is occasionally you get something that you weren't really expecting. In this process, I had a friend of his come to me and say, there's a spam list called SPEWS, Spam Protection Early Warning System. And they have blacklisted an internet service provider in Ohio called FUNET. And some of this is still Googleable. You can find some of the FBI filings on this that happened later. They basically told me, look, if SPEWS doesn't unlist us, we are going to take SPEWS off the internet. We're going to launch a denial of service attack so massive that SPEWS, Spamhaus, everything adjacent to it's going to go off the internet. And I know they have the capability to do this. And there was a Slashdot in the Register article from the time when they did it. But them telling me that they're going to do it, the person being already identified, I knew who it was. I had a name to go with the screen name. And then the fact that the attack is launched, I was working with law enforcement already, and that really connects A to B to C. You know, them telling me that they're going to do it. If this doesn't happen, they do it, and I know who they are. And then I find out later that somebody that I didn't know what she was doing, but that she figured out what I was doing. We worked together, and the result of that was Operation Cyberslam. That was 400 seized computers, and I wish they'd let me keep a copy of this picture because it's hilarious. It is 30 or 40 FBI agents in the FBI standard issue FBI suit. And they've got a van out in front of this house in the middle of suburbia, Columbus, Ohio. And they've got a fireman's line, and they are fireman's lining computers out of this guy's basement where he had optical wave to Chicago and was running a bulletproof host that was hosting command and controls for botnets. And this was during RPC DCOM, LSASS, the two worst Windows exploits in history. And we're talking tens of thousands of cable modems on some of these kids' networks. They had huge amounts of ability to do damage. And they're literally firemen's lining these into a U-Haul because the van's already full. Wow. They had an evidence van, but some fed had to go rent a U-Haul. I wish I got it because the picture was just so funny. They're lined out the door of this house, just a regular house in the middle of Columbus, Ohio. And yeah, that was 10 arrests just domestically, 1 or 2 overseas. All these computers were seized. They were running forums for illegal credit carders. They were running forums for spammers. And of course, they were running forums for child sexual exploited material, the worst of the worst. And we got all of it.
Wow. I bet that was a hell of a feeling. Very good feeling.
It was a very weird, because that raid, I still remember this, went down on Valentine's Day. That was a very weird Valentine's Day because I was supposed to go out to dinner with my girlfriend, And actually, she came over and we were just watching their IRC network laughing. I think we got sushi or something and just sat in and literally watched these people rage because they knew what was coming next and that they were all going to prison.
Oh, well, man. Like I said, when was that?
Oh, I said 03 or 04. I know it was Valentine's Day.
Yeah, okay.
I remember that.
She sounds like a very understanding woman.
No, she thought watching these guys yell and scream was absolutely hilarious. So instead of watching a movie, we were watching these people. It was hilarious.
Wow.
Because, I mean, they knew they were all going to prison.
Yeah. Yeah. No, cool. I think as well, then, you talk about the level of organization and stuff like that as well. I can remember having another Christian Hyatt from Risk 360 on, and he was talking about a ransomware group, and I think the actual ransomware group themselves got hacked, but what it revealed was just the level of organization and like internal structure and departmental structure. Like some people just think don't probably realize the level of organization behind the business, do they?
No, especially these Eastern European and Russian groups are extremely organized. I mean, it runs like a business. And in fact, years and years ago, when I was dealing with spammers, there was actually already an organized crime group that was exploiting open proxies to send spam out of Russia called the Russian Business Network, or RBN. And what we knew was that the people that were running this actually had ties to the Kremlin. And my assumption, while I can't prove this, nor do I speak Russian, is that the computers that they hacked into, if they had nothing useful on them, they would send spam with it. Obviously, if they found something useful, I'm sure that just got sent across the street to the KGB. Hey, we found this. It looks like it's useful. It's a trade secret. It's something related to the DoD or the U.S. military. That would just get pushed across the street. And in exchange, the Russian government looked the other way and let these guys function. The Internet Research Bureau, of course, which was run by Prigozhin until he passed away in such an unfortunate and unexpected plane crash, that ran in exactly the same way. This is being done blatantly illegal, but it is being done in the furtherance of the interests of the Russian government. And I'm not singling out Russia here. There are governments, even in Eastern Europe, where they've either given up, they don't care. Southeast Asia, of course, the Philippines, Malaysia, these places that have governments that aren't very strong, that are not technically sophisticated. I see a huge amount of organization because there's no risk to being organized. Here, if you're that organized, you're going to end up with a RICO case.
Yeah.
But overseas now, that's not the way it is.
Yeah, Andrew, yeah. I think I know some of the answers to this question. I mean, you've got a lot of energy, and I can tell from things you say and the time we spent together before, like you've got a genuine thirst for knowledge and you want to find out what's happening like again and again, and you want to find out the latest things. And I think that's probably a big part of why you've done so well in the industry. But the question I wanted to ask you was, like, you've got obviously a lot of the hacker mindset knowledge. You're able to get yourself into director position that you're in now and leadership positions. You know a lot about blue team, red team, and you talked about the stuff you were doing with Christian Scott in the MSP. If I'm listening thinking, God, like, how do I get like all of this? How do I get up to that level and get all that knowledge? What would you say to me if I'm listening thinking that?
Constantly learn. When I say learn, I don't mean you have to get to a level of proficiency where you're doing it every day. I know Python. Does that mean I could go step into a Python job right now? No. But I know Python. I know enough Python to be able to look at Python and say, ooh, that looks problematic, or that looks okay. Security is, and in two ways, I think. First of all, cybersecurity, it's not a technology discipline, because now with computers being so pervasive and technology being so pervasive throughout a business, you need to be able to understand finance. You need to be able to understand warehouse and supply chain. You need to be able to understand all of these pieces that are inside of your business. If you've got industrial controller SCADA, thanks to the CIA, now you need to have at least a passing understanding of IC and SCADA. So it is very much learn an inch deep. Spend a week learning as much about this as you can, and then move on to the next thing. And just constantly be learning. I mean, it's kind of cliche, and there's people that aren't going to want to do that. But even in my time off, I'm a huge history buff. I study history constantly. I could go into as much detail on the Pacific Campaign during World War II if you want to, or at least some of World War I. And it's very much just constantly be learning. The military thing, by the way, I went to a military school. So I was taught military history by a West Point graduate and retired lieutenant colonel. So to not know military history would just be unacceptable. But just constantly keep learning. Find stuff that you're interested in. And instead of watching something that's not valuable during your time off, go watch something about something you're interested in. Even if it's not cybersecurity, keep learning, because learning is a trained skill. So if you stop learning, it will be very hard to go learn again.
Yeah, that's good. And I can tell by just the way you are that you're like that. And when you said just learn something, like I read somewhere once that when you learn and you feed your brain the diet your brain is on, if it's on a good diet and you're not feeding it with some of the rubbish that's out there these days, if you are putting good information in it and knowledge and so on and so forth, there's some science behind this, but apparently like it actually improves the quality of your brain and actually makes you more intelligent.
The most dangerous thing that I hear in this industry, and I've heard it a couple of times, and I've heard it from a couple of people, and at this point, you might as well go dig a hole and put your career in it because it's over. I'm older now, and I don't want to learn that. Okay, let me tell you why your career just ended. And trying to stop people from going down that road, because it is career suicide. Now, I've even seen it, I'm 44, I've seen it in people my age. I'm old now, and I don't want to learn that. No, that's not the way this works anymore. 60 years ago, you could get away with that, but not anymore. The technology is constantly changing. It's constantly moving forwards. I don't have one on my desk, but I have a stack of AI books, and I'm learning to build a machine learning model. You know, why? Because one of the biggest security problems, and I just wrote an article about this actually on Stoic Cybersecurity blog, one of the biggest security threats to small business and medium business is the use of public AI. Anything that you put into the public AI, they can use to train. So if your corporate secrets, if your proprietary knowledge goes into that public AI, be it ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, now they own it. Your secrets, the things that make your business, are gone. So a lot of small businesses are now moving an AI in-house. Okay, what are the security implications of that? I've gone and downloaded Quen. It's a Chinese model. Is that safe for my company to run? Generally, yes. But what are the risks? What do I need to do to protect that infrastructure? What are these challenges? What's going to happen here is that as these new versions roll out, companies are being exposed to other companies' proprietary intellectual property. There was an incident at Samsung where they had put some memory technology that they were working on into ChatGPT to try to see if it had spit out an answer as to why it didn't work. And it was real interesting when that information then got spat out elsewhere and somebody called Samsung and said, "Is this yours?" Be aware that, this is very frightening. These companies have played very fast and loose with intellectual property rights. And I'll tell you what's going to bite them is if one of them finds out that they've managed to ingest software that's licensed under the general public license version 2, they're going to have to release the source code and their entire model and all the training data. So that could include all of your corporate secrets. There's a court that has ordered OpenAI to hold and not delete any chat conversation that they've had for further court review, which means that your corporate secrets could end up in a public docket, which in the United States, once it's in that public docket, is not impossible, but very difficult and very expensive to go have a lawyer have your corporate secrets expunged from that record. So this is going to be something that a lot of small businesses are going to start thinking about. Big businesses already have, but the small and medium-sized business has not yet.
Yeah, I just think, Andrew, it's so true. Like before you mentioned it, I was going to say, mentioned like many decades ago, you could cruise and get away with it. I think as soon as like in the post-COVID hiring boom, when we had all that extra money in the system and everyone was hiring like crazy, 2021, 2022, I almost think even then there was a certain subsection of people in the security space and they probably could get to having conversations with people that were literally sat behind Nessus scans, getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. And I was like, this is just not sustainable. Like this, and I think those people have really been getting found out lately. And I think even more so as time goes on, because listening to you talk now, other conversations that I'm having, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for people that are on it and want to move forward. But I think the people that want to cruise, I think this is a big problem.
Oh, I agree. And it's not just people that want to cruise. And I'll say this, there is an art to reading a Nessus scan, but it's not something that can't be taught in about 10 minutes because their reports are terrible. Product's great, reports are terrible. There is an art to all of these tools. And there's some of them that I'm not good with. I'll be the first to say that I am terrible with Burp Suite. If you want me to go look at a web app, find somebody else. That's not my strength. This is a world now where you can't just do one thing. You have to be a generalist in cybersecurity because you're going to have people come to you with questions and with problems that may not be in your core area of knowledge. If you're on the blue team and you at some point have not had your CFO come to you and say, what are we doing about security around wire transfers? Book a meeting with your CFO now. Because what's going to happen is somebody's going to call using a voice changer and AI and imitate your CEO's voice from a conversation that you had on YouTube. You need about 20, 30 seconds of that CEO's voice. And then I can call you, sound exactly like that CFO, and say, hey, I need you to transfer $100,000 to this account via a wire transfer. And 20 minutes after that lands, that money's already been converted to Bitcoin and it's gone. Christian and I thought this was hilarious because I got to see a video of it. Christian had done a conference for some private equity people. And there was a private equity CEO that was in the front row, and he had gotten enough of that guy talking in some interview. And he said, this has been great. I love talking to you guys, but I'm going to have this CEO give the rest of the presentation. And that CEO's face pops up behind him on the big screen. And that CEO starts delivering Christian's presentation. And that CEO's sitting in the front row. Your security protections around any human interaction right now within your business that are trust-based aren't good enough. Trust doesn't work anymore. Now design your security system.
Yeah, like I say, I bet that was quite good when Christian did that as well, because I bet that got them kind of laughing a bit.
It got them laughing, but then at the end, they all needed a change of pants, because if you can do it to him and it's 30 seconds and you can train an AI, and it's not perfect, but it was good enough that a North Korean hacker was able to get a job at KnowBe4 through social engineering. And I'll say this as well. I work remote. I believe in remote work. I don't think remote work is a problem. Meet anyone you plan to hire face-to-face before you hire them.
The fake candidates thing is massive now. It sounds like you're aware.
Huge.
We don't see it as much because we don't place job adverts. I'm either going out to my network or we're proactively approaching people we know. But I know people that are running job adverts that people say they've already seen more fake candidates so far this year than they did the whole of last night. It's getting really bad.
And with computers getting faster and AI is getting more advanced and requiring less resources, this is democratizing. What we're seeing governments do today, like North Korea, we're going to be able to see organized crime do tomorrow. And for the very, very smart people like Christian, we are going to see them doing this. And Christian obviously would never do anything malicious, but we're going to be able to see just teenagers on the internet able to imitate a CEO, maybe even this year, probably this year. It may already be happening. These hacktivists, other groups are going to be able to do this. Fake videos on YouTube all the time and on Facebook. And the technology that makes that parrot talk is the same technology that will allow a bad actor to steal $100,000 from your company instantly, simply by telling your accounts payable person to transfer $100,000.
Yeah, I think what we're also going to see, Andrew, as well as I think we're going to see the gap between people that are really good and people that are not. I think we're going to see that get bigger and bigger, because if you're really on it with everything that's out there now, I mentioned this before on another pod, but I'll say it again, and it was recently, someone was talking on a LinkedIn post about how they've just got absolutely phenomenal at building exploit code because they're using AI to build it and break it down in front of them, and then the practical hands-on bit. And he did a post to say, look, it's accelerated my learning in terms of building out exploit code just massively. And it's like, when you think about someone like that and like the things you're doing when you're on it, and that compounded over a month, 6 months, 12 months, 18, it's going to be noticeable, I think. Really noticeable.
It is. And it's going to make threat actors a lot more nimble. Today on MITRE ATT&CK Framework, which is a tool that we use on the Blue Team side, there's about 100 different campaigns that bad guys are running on the internet on any given day. If you're protected from those 100, you're going to stop 99% of the threats to your company, your organization, whatever it is that you're protecting. With AI, those attacks are going to become much more varied, much wider, and they're going to be able to implement attacks on recently patched exploits in hours instead of days. The 30-day patch window is probably dead by the end of this year, because if I can write that exploit in 5 minutes, then you better be able to patch in a little bit more than 5 minutes.
It's scary. It's fascinating. Yeah. The sad thing is, we just mentioned with the patch, companies are probably going to have to experience it in the worst possible way first. They're going to have to get hit within 3 or 4 minutes to see it, and then they'll probably step up. Hopefully people will take the education and do it. But you know what it's like? Certain companies, they almost have to be hit before they'll change, don't they? Which is sad.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, because there's 2 ways to learn. You can learn from somebody else's mistakes, which is free, or you can learn from your own mistakes, and that is the most expensive way to learn. There's no amount of hitting yourself with a hammer that's not going to hurt, so probably don't. There's no amount of letting your company get breached and then finding out what the pain and suffering is that comes after that is worth it. You're better off hiring somebody who can make prudent decisions in a cost-effective way for your company and run a security program, expose those risks, and work with the executive team to mitigate them than you are to wait until you've gotten hacked. Wait until it's cost your company millions of dollars. IBM, I haven't seen this year's numbers yet. Last year, the average major breach was $4.8 million. In the market segment that I work in, which is companies that are 50 to 1,000 employees, they don't have $4.8 million sitting around to pay. And they assume maybe, or they haven't even bothered looking at it, that their cybersecurity insurance is going to cover it. And they might, but if they haven't done their due diligence, they won't. Cybersecurity insurance isn't going to cover it if you don't have any cybersecurity. So it is always cheaper to learn from someone else's mistake than to go make it yourself. Every CEO or CFO that's listening to this, if you take nothing else away, please take that away. Don't be the example that ends up on the front page of the New York Times because you got breached and lost 1 million customers' information.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Just to go back about 5 or 10 minutes, you talked a lot about you studying history. Do you find all that helps with your report writing skills and your ability to present findings and stuff like that? I met someone before that was a historian and he sweared it just really enhanced his report writing skills. Bit of a random question, but...
Yes, and I'll be honest here, I'm not the world's best technical writer. In my blog writing process is that I spend about legitimately anywhere from 1 to 3 hours doing research, making sure I've got everything cited, make sure I can back up everything that I'm going to say in that blog article. And I've got it in bullet points, it's semi an outline, it's whatever. And then I go to my writing assistant in ChatGPT and actually start working with it to write the article. I think this comes from my military school background, right? I speak military. And you aren't allowed to use profanity that densely in a corporate blog article. So my tone is usually very direct. And again, it comes from that life experience that I've had, but it's not great for writing a corporate blog. So I've found that getting all the tech that I want in that article and making sure that I've got it really hammered down and then handing it over so that it can't hallucinate is a great balance for writing a blog article. But we aim for about 1,200 words in our blog article, but to produce that, I've written 600 to 700 words of just pure tech, no transition, no filler, no nothing, just to get that blog article, and then said, hey, let's start arranging this into a blog article. And it's got our writing standards, it's got history, and it used to be 2 hours of wrangling with the AI. Now, because it's got so much source material of how I want it to sound, how I want it to look, it really doesn't. But 3 hours of research, half an hour to write the article is about what my blog articles look like. Because again, my tone in writing, and my co-founder, Susan, will tell you this is just very direct if I'm not.
I can tell, by the way, and do you know what? You'll have to tell me a bit more on this, but I bet that is phenomenal when it comes to dealing with C-suite end clients in senior positions, getting budget sign-off, getting them to see what the situation is. Because the more senior folks are, they just like it when you just get to the point and you're clear and concise, and like, that is you.
They do, but they do within a context. I'll definitely admit, I'm still learning that context. Like, you can't walk into a room and say, look, here, you're going to spend money on this and this, and here's why. You do need to give them that foundation and that kind of surrounding, especially with something that is as scary to executives today as cybersecurity. This is a skill I'm still learning of this is how we get to this. It's really a 30-second intro to give them a frame of reference and then this. But if they don't have that frame of reference to start and attract their mind onto what you're going to say and make sure that they're going to be receptive to that, you really shoot yourself in the foot. It's not what you say, it's really how you bookend it. And as I said, it's a skill I'm still learning.
Yeah, that's so true. Someone said that to me years ago as well. Sometimes you can say the same thing, and if your tonality is different, you almost say something really harsh and get away with it and get the point across. Yeah, you're right. I think tonality it's a lot.
And my favorite F1 driver of all time, Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know if you follow F1, but the things that he could say with a dead straight face and get away with it because of the tone he used was unbelievable. That's a skill. And by the way, if you're on the red team side, that's a skill that's phenomenally useful when you're doing social engineering. Understand the tone of your voice. If you sound like you're a security engineer, they're going to start thinking, wait, this guy's an engineer. This guy's not in our marketing team. Understand the tone of your voice and where you're coming from, because engineers people who are technical in any field, anything from civil engineering out to cybersecurity engineering, we talk very directly, we talk very factually. When you start getting into what I'll use Simon Trevelyan's term, the colored pencil department, where you're dealing with sales, marketing, HR, or trying to pretend to be those people, if you have that direct engineer's tone, you're not going to get very far social engineering. So just understand the target audience. And to me, it was very difficult, for not just because I'm not good at it, but because it always feels dishonest to me, because I have a history of being very good at social engineering. I don't like using that with people, and I step too far to the other side of not using it because it feels dishonest, even if it's not. And that's something I'm having to untrain from my time in the red team. Using the same techniques with an executive that you've previously used to steal logins, accounts, and credit information from a company in a penetration test, it feels a little bit dishonest, even when what you're doing is in their best interest, even when what you're doing is just conveying normal blue side information. I don't like anything that feels to me like social engineering, and I try very hard to avoid it. And I've been trying to understand on that dial where the correct amount is to effectively communicate it without being anything that would appear to be manipulative.
Yeah, cool. Andrew, makes sense. On the, we talked a bit about kind of brain diet and the information you're putting into your brain. And I think we both agree the compound effect of putting the good stuff in, it really kicks in. I used to ask what book has had the best impact on your career and made you the best person of yourself, but it could be like, where are you getting your information from, or what kind of sources are you using that could help other people? What's the best stuff out there at the minute, would you say?
I used to read Wired's blog. And in fact, I did an interview with Kevin Poulsen years ago when they were running, was it 22/B/, which eventually became Threat something. I can't remember the name. It started as a Kafka reference and then went to just being like a normally named cybersecurity blog. That disappeared. There aren't a lot of great cybersecurity blogs anymore. I do spend a lot of time on YouTube. I have some credibility concerns with CISA, but I do at least take a peek at CISA's webpage a couple of times a week to see if there's anything that's earth-shattering there. I constantly am reading. I'm watching, obviously, CVEs as they come out, looking for anybody that's specifically talking about maybe one CVE. If it's a 10.0 and people are talking about it, that's expected. If it's a 7 and people are talking about it, I'm going to go find out why, because that's not as expected. So what makes this vulnerability something that's being talked about? So those are a lot of what I'm doing, is just trying to get a read of the room as to what's going on. I have always, throughout my career, loved the Register. It's essentially a UK cybersecurity and technology tabloid. Not only is the coverage hilarious, usually incredibly on point. They had a concept in the UK of the court jester. And the court jester was the only person in the court who could tell the king the truth. And I think there's a lot of that value with the Register, because they're going to tell you the truth. And, it's being delivered as a joke. There really is hard truths in this industry. And I think they do a good job of covering them most of the time.
No, cool. Yeah. I'm pleased to hear you mention YouTube as well, because heavily overpriced for what it is, but it is great. The YouTube Premium, whereby there's no adverts. Yeah, it's great because you can have your phone in your pocket, you can have your AirPods in, and you don't need to keep the phone open and all the rest of it. Mine cancelled itself or whatever, and I tried to live without it. I lasted about 2 weeks, and I just signed back up because it was actually affecting my rate of learning, because I'm probably a bit like you, Andrew. If I've got a spare minute, even if it's 10 minutes and I'm walking around, I'll just pop my AirPods in and I'll just be getting some really good quality information. And over the course of 6, 12, 18 months, it makes a big difference. But yeah, no, YouTube's mega. I love it.
The other one that I'll recommend, and this is not an ad because it's constantly on YouTube as an ad, I'm a huge ground news user. And the reason why I like that is that I get a pretty high signal to noise ratio of what's going on in the world. I'll throw categories like cybersecurity in these countries, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, not for the war, but for the fact that these are hotspots for cybersecurity criminals, Turkey as well. And what I want to know is, what are they doing? Is there any news that day? And I'm just looking really for both the politics, because everything in the world is politics. The fact that these people are doing this is that there's somebody who's getting a political gain out of it, or they'd be in prison. What's the latest that's going on in Ukraine? In 2022, there was one of these ransomware groups that had people in it from both Ukraine and Russia, and the speed with which they turned on each other when those Russian tanks crossed the border was abrupt. And all of a sudden you had, hey, here's all the Russians doxing all the Ukrainians, and here's all the Ukrainians doxing all the Russians. And I'm sure that the FBI just looked at that and said, thanks, guys, you did our job for us.
Do you know what? With everything going on in the world at the minute, even in the last 5 months, like so much is happened. The amount that must be going on in the cyber warfare, it must be just busy. Very.
I haven't seen too much more. And the reason why I say too much more is the cliff that we climbed in 2022 when that invasion started, I've seen just more and more Russian threat actors, because they weren't going to arrest them and hand them over to the United States. They arrested an entire Russian ransomware gang about a week before that invasion. Do you think they went to prison, or do you think they went to work for the Internet Research Group? Congratulations, you've been arrested. You were drafted. We've seen a little bit more from primarily Iran, but just the amount of and the hostility increased massively in 2022. We really haven't seen a huge bump since, but just because we are at such a high tempo now and have been for about a month, 3-4 years, it's unbelievable, and it continues.
Yeah, it has. Ever since COVID, really, life just hasn't been normal, mate, has it? It's been like politically. I think I've been sat here with you before, chatting, going, I think we were talking about business and stuff like that, and I just said, yeah, it's good. I just wish life was a bit more normal.
I'll take some thanks from it. There's an old saying in the British Army, there's 2 ways to get promoted: bloody wars and sickly seasons.
Yeah.
And we are in the middle of, in the cybersecurity world, I would call it a bloody war right now. It is very much a threat. One of the verticals that we're targeting, Stoic Cybersecurity, the company I'm working for, is especially utilities. And the reason for that is we don't want them adjusting the mix in the water and deleting a 0 from the decimal, the amount of fluoride that they add, and poisoning everyone. We don't want people turning off the power or turning off the gas, creating some sort of pressure imbalance. With these utilities, these things that we take for granted and will be attacked and are being attacked as we speak, especially smaller utilities that don't have the resources of, like a Consolidated Edison, like the resources of Duke Energy. These smaller grids are very much at risk. Small water companies are very much at risk. And, you know, what happens when cybersecurity becomes a question of, can you trust the water you drink?
Yeah. People outside security wouldn't even comprehend that was even possible. I can remember when I first found out about that, I was like, what? They can poison
the water.
Yeah,
absolutely. If somebody connects the wrong patch cable into the wrong thing, your water company's SCADA network is now on the internet, or at least accessible. It's not air-gapped anymore. It's a simple mistake to make. The biggest threat in this industry is always, it's never technology, it's always human error. You can stack all the technology up you want, and one human error, and it all falls down.
Yeah, now there's a lot of words to do. Where do you see things in the next kind of 3 to 5 years? What do you think? I know we're talking a lot about on the attacking side, but there's going to be some gains on the defensive side. You think AI and the way everything's going, you think it's going to make it better, worse, or where do you think it's heading?
The first thing that we're going to see before we get to what AI is going to do for the defending side, once companies actually have AIs and they work on the defending side, I think it'll help. I've yet to see that. And every time I've had one of these companies come to me with, hey, we have this amazing new whiz-bang AI thing. And I'm like, okay, show me the AI. They can't.
Okay.
So they have learning, they have some algorithms, but do they have really an AI that's functioning and doing what they say it does? Is it actually a running AI sort of way? No, they really don't. So that will come. But the biggest thing that we are going to see is the end of trust in humans. By that, I mean, we already see passkeys. I'm not a proponent of passkeys yet, but in the next generation of hardware, when you can start storing all the passkeys on the TPM and the passkeys never get into RAM and the passkeys can never be copied out, I think passkeys are going to be amazing, because it means that you have the equivalent of 2FA without that user having to remember anything or being in a position to divulge anything. You're going to see an end of trust in humans, because bluntly, the human mind is not designed to deal with the world that we have today. And I'll be honest, I was wrong about this for years. I'm like, why won't these stupid people just stop putting their username into every website they come across? And the more that I've learned to understand human nature, it is literally the nature of a human to be helpful. If you can convince a human that they're helping you, that nearly anything, including destroy the company they're working for. And we need to take the trust out of, and this is a big part of zero trust, but it's the part that's not talked about. We are going to stop where we even trust the person And all of the security is going to be handled in a way that's transparent to them because they can't be trusted to make those decisions anymore.
Yeah, that sounds good when we get there, when we take the human out.
We will. And 70% of all of the MITRE ATT&CK frameworks have some sort of human or social engineering aspect to them at some point in the, and God, I love this term. I'm glad we have Lockheed Martin. The cyber attack kill chain. You can tell they're a defense contractor. But yeah, at some point in that, from investigation and enumeration to exfiltration, at some point in 70% of those 100 to 130 active campaigns, there's a human element of they've social engineered someone, or they've done something to get a password, a credential, or some sort of knowledge from a human to get from A to B. So if you cut that off, you cut off 70% of kill chains. Yes, you might still have a computer get hacked. You might end up with a virus on it or ransomware, but that ability for it to pervade through the whole network is gone. And that's what you want to prevent.
Yeah. I think the biggest benefit, like from the defensive side so far, like some of the stuff that maybe junior SOC analysts were doing with triaging events and stuff like that, and a lot of that is going to be able to just done. So in terms of like efficiency, I think a lot of the maybe more, not all of them, but some of the lower level tasks can just be done like really quick.
I think it's going to take SOC analysts from a position of where they're doing threat hunting and they're actively digging through information, which is something that's very auditable and automatable, and turn them into subject matter experts on the data that's being presented, and someone who in an incident response is going to be able to say, here's what we've got and here's what this means, instead of being, okay, so I'll go look and see if we can find that indicator of compromise. Those indicators of compromise will already be surfaced.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to provide the information that's going to allow more senior analyst or engineer to match that to a specific threat profile, a specific cybersecurity attack kill chain. I'm never going to get over that. That's so hilarious to me and so over the top. But they're going to be able to match those up more quickly and know what those next steps are, know how to cut the bad guy off. And what we're waiting to see is then that technology that automates cutting off that next step. Once that kill chain's identified, the killer technology for the blue team is going to be, okay, you've gotten this far through the kill chain. We know you're 2 steps from exfiltration, but thus far you really haven't gotten anything other than that you've broken into a couple of computers, gotten a couple of passwords. What step does this system need to take automatically before we even start an incident response to stop this breach, right? How do we stop it? And then we could talk about remediation, recovery, and lessons learned. But if we can get that stopping piece to be automated, then your focus of the incident response is a lot different. And I think we'll see that.
Yeah, mate. I think we could do another hour if we wanted to, couldn't we? We've done an hour already.
Probably. I don't know what your schedule looks like. I've got about 30 minutes and then I have a meeting with the customer. So
yeah, listen, mate, it's been really good, Andrew. Is there anything I haven't asked you, mate, that I should have asked you, or anything like that you could think of?
It's almost like you're good at doing interviews and might be part of your job. No, I think you actually nailed it. Well done. And maybe you can keep that job of yours.
Yeah, no, but honestly, mate, thanks, because this has happened on a few episodes recently where, like, one of the advantages of doing the podcast that I never foresee was that it would be good for my own self-development and obviously getting to have conversations that I might have had eventually, but maybe not as in-depth and maybe not as quick. It's really nice. You've got like a real energy about you, and it's nice to hear you dive in, and I can see why you've acquired so much knowledge, because if you've maintained that level of energy, which I'm sure you have over a long period of time, like you say, it's just got you where you are today. So no, thanks, mate. Thanks from me, and there'll be loads in there for the listeners. And yeah, it's been good fun. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Great talking to you.
Yeah, cool, mate. But yeah, thanks, mate. And I'll see you soon. Thanks, buddy.